Hey, hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma231 here, back in today, talk about Oshi no Ko, chapter number 136. This chapter is titled Fight. I swear, for a series it's like a seinen, I'm pretty sure, yeah, Oshi no Ko is a seinen series, I think, because it runs in weekly Young Jump, which even though it's like a Shueisha magazine, I'm pretty sure that Young Jump is a seinen magazine, but for a seinen acting series, pretty much, like revenge-based series, Oshi no Ko definitely leans into the whole thing of oh, fight, this series is so dramatic, we need a cool name such as Fight for a chapter. I don't know, I just find that very interesting, but like I said, today we're going to be talking about chapter 136 of Oshi no Ko. Of course, last time there was a big chapter all about director Gon Tonda and his sort of, not the way he makes people act, but sort of the authority that he has in the acting industry. And also, of course, with our conflict going on with Nino, or Kana, and of course Ruby being we sort of got a bit more introspective into that. And of course, with a chapter title being Fight, what two characters are fighting in the series right now but Kana and Ruby, and that is what this chapter almost entirely focuses on, because, not to get too far into it before we actually start, but this chapter pretty much all is in the span of one scene of the movie, right? And while it's going on, we sort of see this is like one continuous cut, and we get some interspersed dialogue between some other characters. I mean, Ruby speaks up, or not Ruby, Aqua speaks up, Gon Tonda speaks up, and a lot of other people sort of have thoughts and ideas, but there is just a whole bunch of just these two acting and getting their feelings out. And that's what a grand majority of this chapter is all about. But before we get started, I just need to say that, yeah, of course, we're behind on Oshi no Ko chapter reviews again, but that's fine. Life happens, and let's just go and start with Oshi no Ko chapter number 136. So, we open up this chapter, of course, one of the producers of the 15-Year Lie is taking one of those, screen clicker things. I'm honestly not 100% sure what those things are meant for. I'm pretty sure the whole thing of why they snap down is to make sure that video and audio is synced together. So, of course, whenever you see it snap together, and it'll make that audible sound of click, so they know, okay, whenever we see it snap and the click happens in the audio, that is lined up, right? But we pretty much see in the background, we see that Ruby is there, of course, in the whole get-up as and Kana is there in the get-up of Nino, and we see that Kana is walking into a room where, of course, Ruby is sort of sitting down in front of a mirror with a bunch of makeup items on it, apparently. Or at least that's what it seems like. So, or maybe not, because it does look like Ruby has a spoon in her hand, so she may be just eating something on a break, but I'm not 100% sure here. But we pretty much see that this is cut 57 of the movie, and it is and Nino's farewell, because of course this is something big to happen in the movie, or in real life, so it will be happening in the movie, right? So we see Kana walk into the room where is here, or Ruby. Man, it's going to mess me up so much on what to call these characters here, right? I'm going to try to call them by their names, but I know I'm going to slip up at some point. So we see Kana is in here, and she's like, oh, hey, and she sort of walks in and is like, oh man, you're just so lucky, and she just says, I'm no match for you, sort of just starting off rip, hey, here's how this conversation's going to go, you better get ready for it, right? As we see that Kana is just why did things turn out this way? As we start to get more of an introspection on Nino's character, as we sort of see that Aqua is looking in at the whole filming process, and we just get this narration just saying Nino, real name, Fuyuko Nino, and just know, this isn't Nino as we see it in the series, is Nino, but her real name is N-double-I-N-O, right? So it's it's, instead of Nino, it's Nino. You gotta put the emphasis on two I's there, so that is a little interesting, because of course we know that these are idols, and while most of the idols we've seen, of course Ruby kept her name, Kana was already a famous actor before that point, it would sort of seem like the same thing with an author, where you want a pseudonym in a way, just not your real name. A lot of manga authors do that, Aka Akasaka, who writes this series. I don't know if we actually know that is his real name, or that it's not just a pen name. Because, of course, if I'm not mistaken, the author of My Hero Academia, Kohei Horikoshi, that is actually a pen name. Kohei Horikoshi isn't his real name. So, it's just a little weird to, okay, like Nino comes into ad agency, like, all right, we're gonna make you into an idol, right? Oh, we're just gonna take one letter out of your name, and that's gonna be your name, so your idol name. So I just found that a little interesting, right? But as the narration continues, we just get the whole idea of I joined Biko Nahachi a little later. So Nino was I's senior in Biko Nahachi. She was a key figure behind the success of Biko Nahachi's great start. So we're just solidifying Nino as, yeah, Nino was really important. And then continuing on to saying, like, she was a popular member in the early days of Biko Nahachi, but after I officially joined, she gradually lost her fans to I since her target audience was the exact same. And we also get more narrations going like, well, to be actually exact, I stole everyone's fans, right? And it's like, they were a complete pyramid with I at its center. And it's like, that is the kind of group that Biko Nahachi was. We get more narration just saying that everyone must have felt conflicted towards I, but among them, Nino's feelings were the strongest and deepest. Which does make a lot of sense, because for a person who was the focus point of Biko Nahachi in the beginning, right? Like, Nino is the reason why Biko Nahachi probably began and was able to keep that success for I to eventually come in and sort of dominate in that sphere. Yeah, it makes sense to why Nino would be the most pissed, right? And then we just get more narration just saying, like, even now, she hates I and is still fixated on her. And presumably this is coming there from Kana's perspective during all of this, while she's sort of, like, thinking this while saying her lines. But as we eventually get back into it, of course, Nino just walked in and said, like, hey, why did things have to turn out this way? And she just says, like, hey, I wish I were you, I. And we see that I, or Ruby, turns around and is like, oh, what the heck? I mean, I just want to be like you instead, right? But we see that Kana's like, no, stop that. That's a total lie. And she just says, just ask all those people over there in the stand. She's like, if we stand side by side and ask these people, who do you think is cuter? Every one of them will say, I. And we sort of see that she just says, like, the same thing goes for the fans. That's exactly what they'll say, too. And she's like, who is more attractive? Who do you want to go on a date with? Who? And we see it, she just sort of breaks down and is like, I. Just everybody is clinging to I. They will all choose you. And of course to this, I is just like, nah, I don't think so. Which, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the whole, nah, I'd win. But that's a different series and a totally different point there. But we see that Nino is still very upset about this. Is like, you always dodge these questions, I. And she's like, you're not even interested in me, are you? But I's just like, oh, well, I mean, I am. But of course, we see that Nino's like, no, you're just lying. Like, there's no way you actually are. But Nino's just like, I'm doing my very best too, you know? And she's like, I practice more seriously than anyone else. And yet, and as she says, it sort of starts to devolve into this sort of madness in a way. We sort of get an introspection now to Kana and Ruby's current relationship. As we see, of course, Kana, who is, like, on the ground acting as Nino in front of I here. And we sort of see, like, I guess, like, her force ghost behind the current Kana is like, yeah, Nino, I totally understand. This is like, you must have been really frustrated, huh? She says, you were always jealous of that girl who was blessed with the natural talent and attracted everyone's attention. As, of course, she thinks not only of I, but, of course, I's daughter, Ruby, and how these two mix into the whole equation, right? And she just continues saying, like, hey, more than anyone else, you realize that she was so special, and that she was also different from you. She had everything that your heart desired, but it's actually different than that, right? And she says that you'll neither hate nor love somebody who's already dead for many years. And she says, I understand exactly how you feel now. As she just sort of continues to say, like, hey, Nino, when it comes to I, before she became your object of jealousy and faith, wasn't she also a friend to you? And at this point, like, we understand, like, yeah, of course, Nino was so fed up with I because I stole everything that Nino had personally, right? Like, I stole her fans. I stole her identity in a way from her because Ai was the one who came in to become Hachi and created the more of a name for herself. And at a certain point, Nino wasn't blessed with the natural looks and beauty that Ai had that made her so successful in that world. And yeah, that is just a very interesting message just to see. And of course, Kana's retrospection of looking at her and Ruby to saying like, hey, wasn't she really a friend to you? As we sort of just see another image here, as we see, of course, Ai's phone before she died. And of course, when Aqua spent all the time figuring out the password for her, again, that being 45510, right? But on the phone, we see pictures between both Ai and Nino of them being genuine friends, as we sort of see like the two of them posing beside each other, presumably out and about somewhere. And kind of just continues just thinking like, she was your friend, but you were jealous of her, but you also admired her. And she's like, it must have been really painful for you, right? As we sort of just see that Kana continues on into breakdown into present, just like, I hate you so much, I'd wish you just die. And we just see the image of like, she's just crying and yelling at Ai, and Ai is just like reaching out to like put a hand on her shoulder. But before she can do this, she just sort of pauses and just freezes up. As, of course, Kana just thinks more of like, this, wasn't this just an ordinary fight between two friends at the time? If that person wasn't Ai, I'm sure that you would have wanted to go and patch things up and be friends with that person forever. That should have been your true feeling in the moment. Which is why her smile is so suffocating. As we look over to, of course, where Ai, being Ruby, is. But this whole time, while Kana or Nino is just yelling at Ai and is just putting out these feelings of, I just wish you would die, like, get out of my life, like, you're ruining everything. We just see the smile that Ai had just there and just smiling. Like, at a point you're just like, man, like, these are some strong-willed characters, right? We'll get to that later, but of course we see to this that Kana just looks on from the background. It's like, it makes yourself cry, doesn't it, Nino? As we see that Nino eventually walks out of the room, and presumably the scene is over. But as she's walking out, she's like thinking, not bad, Ruby, that's pretty good. And she's like, you don't need to worry about me at all. As she just thinks like, I know you. But before she can do that, we see that the screen cutter guy, whatever you call that clacker, the movie film scene, is getting ready to stop. It sort of like scene cut. But Gotonda, after seeing this, like, puts a hand on the guy's shoulder, like, hey, buddy boy, just wait a little longer. And as the guy's like, huh, what are you talking about? All of a sudden, we hear a crash. As we see that Ai is there, of course, Ruby, who has grabbed a jar, presumably the jar of what she was eating earlier. It's not really shown at any other point, but she takes this and she throws it at the door that, Nino or Kana just left out of, and just pelts it against the door. It shatters this glass bottle, and running down the door, it's just like drips of blood almost, just seemingly running down, and we see that everybody in the filming studio is like, huh? Like, what's going on? Like, I expected there was like an audible gasp of, oh, as it all happened. And we see that Aqua's also looking at this, and Aqua actually looks really shocked because of this, as we see that a lot of people are just like, you've got to be kidding me. But we also see at the same time Ruby saying this. She's like, you've got to be kidding me. I hate everyone. Screw them all. What did I even do wrong anyway? As we see that Ai herself, Ruby, in this situation, is having this total breakdown and sort of showing the other side of Ai, because as much of a strong-willed person that Ai was, to feel all of those feelings of negativity coming from others, especially what she was feeling with Nino, yeah, she would break down on her own. And like I said, we're a few chapters behind, but next chapter we'll get a lot more into sort of what of this means. But the last image we see on the page is not only this dark Sharingan Ai, because of course you got the dark Sharingans now, two of them, like, this is bad, right? But we not only see her just going like, hell, screw them all, like, I just wish they would all die. But we also see that, Goton is there on the bottom, just like, okay, we can work with this, and that's where we end off the chapter. I really do enjoy this chapter. Like I said, I haven't been the most excited about this whole Ruby Kana conflict, because I understand what Akaksaka's trying to go for. Like, this happened with the original Become Hachi, and it's also happening now for almost the exact same situation of somebody who is just so out there and so overshadowing this other person. I understand what he's going for there, but it's just not particularly my favorite thing out there, which is a problem. We all have our own personal opinions, but I also know where this sort of goes next chapter, so it sort of ruins a little bit of like the suspense in a way, but overall, just the whole idea of, hey, Nino, you and I were friends. It is a very nice sentiment, and one that I do subscribe to, so that's pretty cool. I really don't have too much else to say. I sort of just went through a chapter, gave my thoughts on it, and we called that a W in this thing. Like, so yeah. Again, I was Glowplasma231. I have a bunch of other Oshi no Ko chapter reviews on the channel, so if you ended up enjoying this one, maybe you wouldn't mind going checking out some of those. It really helps me out. And if you've got a theory or anything about this chapter, I would love to hear it down in the comment section down below. I read every comment, so I'd be very interested if anybody said anything, so that's pretty cool. And if that, I don't have too much else to say. Yeah, this is Oshi no Ko, chapter number 136, titled Fight, and yes, there was a fight. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. This will be Glowplasma231.